You are not overwhelmed by life. You are overwhelmed by your own unchecked mind. And the most dangerous thing about it is that you've mistaken this chaos for your personality. You've told yourself, this is just how I am, when in reality, it is how you have been trained by neglect, by distraction, by emotional laziness that feels normal, because everyone around you shares it. And right now as you listen, your thoughts are already reacting, commenting, judging, agreeing, resisting, proving the point before it's even finished, because the mind hates being observed. It prefers to operate in the dark where it can run uncontrolled, convincing you that worry is responsibility, that anxiety is awareness, that emotional noise is depth, when in truth, it is weakness dressed as importance. And if that sounds uncomfortable, good, because comfort is the drug that keeps you asleep inside your own head. Pause. Breathe slowly, not to relax, but to notice. Notice how even the act of doing nothing creates tension in you, how silence feels invasive, how stillness feels unsafe. Because when the external world goes quiet, the internal one becomes undeniable, and most people spend their entire lives running from that confrontation, filling every gap with sound, with scrolling, with stimulation, with endless internal dialogue, not because they are curious, but because they are afraid of discovering how little control they have over their own attention. Here is the truth you've been avoiding. Your mind does not work for you. You work for it. It pulls you into the past without permission. It throws you into imaginary futures without warning. It replays moments that no longer exist and forces you to emotionally relive them as if repetition could somehow rewrite reality. And you comply again and again without resistance, without question. And then you wonder why you feel tired even when nothing has happened, why you feel drained even on days with no effort. It's because mental friction consumes more energy than physical labor ever could. Every unnecessary thought is a leak. Every emotional overreaction is a tax. Every imagined problem is interest paid on a debt that doesn't exist. And the tragedy is not that this happens. The tragedy is that you've normalized it. You've accepted constant internal pressure as the baseline of being human. But it is not human nature. It is untrained nature, and untrained nature always defaults to chaos. Close your eyes, not as a ritual, but as an act of confrontation, and notice the first thing that appears, a thought, a sensation, an impulse to adjust, to scratch, to move, to escape the moment. Observe it without acting. This is where most people fail immediately, because the moment you don't obey the mind, it becomes louder, more dramatic, it escalates, it throws discomfort at you as a test, and you've been conditioned to interpret discomfort as danger. So you retreat, you distract, you give in. But discomfort is not danger, it is resistance leaving the system. It is the mind losing dominance and panicking because its authority is being questioned. Understand this clearly. The mind does not want peace. It wants control. It wants movement. It wants reaction. Because reaction keeps it relevant. And relevance is how it maintains power over you. Every time you react automatically, you reinforce the pattern. Every time you pause, you weaken it. And this is why the simple act of stillness is more threatening to your old patterns than any motivational speech ever could be. Motivation excites the mind. Discipline silences it. And silence is where control is reclaimed. Notice now how thoughts arise on their own, uninvited, unfiltered, some about this moment, some about later, some about nothing at all. And notice something more important. They appear and they disappear without your help, without your approval, without your effort, which means they are not you. They never were. They are events, not identities, but somewhere along the way you confused the observer with the noise. You fused your sense of self with the activity of the mind, and from that fusion came suffering. Because when the mind is unstable, you feel unstable. When the mind is chaotic, you feel chaotic. When the mind imagines loss, you experience grief in advance. When the mind predicts failure, you feel defeated before acting. This is not awareness. This is self-sabotage running on autopilot. And the first step toward control is brutal in its simplicity. Stop believing every thought simply because it appears in your head. Most thoughts are not insights. They are reflexes, echoes of past conditioning, habits formed by repetition, fears inherited from environments that no longer exist, yet you treat them as authority, as prophecy, as truth. Pause again. Feel the space between thoughts, even if it's brief. That space is not emptiness. It is clarity. It is the natural state that exists beneath the noise, and it has always been there. Covered, not destroyed. Buried, not lost. And you don't need to create it. You need to stop interfering with it. Understand this rule deeply. Events do not disturb you. Interpretations do. Two people can experience the same moment and suffer differently, not because reality changed, but because judgment did. And judgment is optional, even if it doesn't feel that way yet. Feelings lag behind decisions, always. And if you wait to feel calm before choosing calm, you will wait forever. Calm is not an emotion, it is a stance, a position you take toward reality regardless of how the nervous system reacts. Initially, the body reacts fast, the mind reacts fast, discipline reacts slow, and that slowness is strength. Say this internally without forcing it. This moment does not require my opinion. Pause. Let the words sink beneath the surface because most of your stress comes from unnecessary commentary. The mind narrates everything as if it were a courtroom drama, assigning blame, predicting outcomes, rehearsing defenses. But reality does not need your narration to function. It existed before your thoughts, and it will continue after them. And when you stop narrating, you start participating. Now notice how the urge to evaluate this experience appears. Is this working? Am I doing it right? Should I feel different by now? This urge is the mind trying to reassert control by turning awareness into performance, but there is nothing to perform, nothing to achieve, nothing to fix in this moment. There is only noticing, and noticing is enough, because what is noticed loses power to dominate unconsciously. This is the quiet shift most people never experience, the moment where thoughts stop being commands and start being options. And options are freedom. But freedom is uncomfortable to a mind trained on reaction, because freedom removes excuses. When you realize you can choose your response, you lose the luxury of blaming circumstances, people, or moods, and responsibility replaces victimhood. This is why most people unconsciously resist self-mastery, not because it is hard, but because it is honest. It forces you to admit that much of your suffering was optional, rehearsed, maintained, and that realization can sting more than any external failure. Stay with that sting. Don't flinch. This is where transformation begins, not with relief, but with clarity. Clarity that cuts through self-deception. Clarity that exposes how often you abandon the present moment to live in imagined scenarios that never arrive. How often you rehearse conversations that will never happen. How often you punish yourself for futures that exist only as mental images. And then you call this preparation. But it is not preparation. Preparation is action. Worry is avoidance, pretending to be work. And the cost of that avoidance is your attention, your energy, your peace, and the mind will continue to take as much as you allow it to take, because it has no built-in limit. It is not designed to protect you. It is designed to survive, to predict, to scan for threats. And in a modern world where most threats are psychological, it turns inward and feeds on its own projections, creating a loop of tension without resolution. The way out is not force, not suppression, not positive thinking, but training. The same way you would train a muscle or an animal, with consistency, with patience, with clear boundaries. Every time a thought arises that is not useful, not actionable, not grounded in the present, you acknowledge it without engagement and return to the sensation of breathing, not because breathing is magical, but because it is real. It is happening now. It anchors you to something that cannot exist in the past or future, and each return is a repetition. Each repetition is a vote for control. This is not dramatic. It is mechanical, and that is why it works. Dramatic solutions excite the mind. Mechanical ones retrain it. Feel the rhythm of your breath now, slow, unforced. And notice how the mind still tries to intrude, offering commentary, analysis, resistance. Let it. But do not follow. You're not trying to stop thoughts. You are proving to yourself that you don't have to obey them. And that proof accumulates quietly, invisibly, until one day you realize that silence no longer feels empty. It feels stable. It feels like ground beneath your feet. And that realization changes how you move through the world. Because when your inner state is not constantly shifting, external events lose their leverage. Criticism loses its sting. Uncertainty loses its terror. Waiting loses its impatience. You stop needing immediate resolution because you're no longer uncomfortable with not knowing. And this is where real strength begins, not in domination of others, but in non-reactivity within yourself. Pause here. Stay present. Let the last thought fade on its own. Do nothing, just notice. This is the work, and most people will never do it, not because it is complex, but because it requires facing the one thing they've avoided their entire lives: themselves.